He was my dad. The persona never really touched me. When I saw him, he was dad.
He was my dad. I was never really moved by the character. He was dad when I saw him. People knew Andre the Giant for being very big, but did you know that his daughter is even bigger? How did she become better than the legend? What's her story? Let's find out some interesting facts about Andre the Giant's daughter and what makes her unique. There is a giant born. The giant was born on May 19, 1946, in Colombier, France. Colombier is a small town about 40 miles east of Paris. There was no doubt about it from the start that he was different. Andre was 13 pounds when he was born, which is a lot more than the normal baby. The size he was at birth was just the start of a life full of amazing growth. Andre grew up in the quiet farming town of Moulins, which is not far away. In Moulins life was simple and hard. Boris and Marian Roussimoff were Andre's parents. They were farmers. They didn't have much money and worked hard to support their 5 kids. Even though Andre was the middle child in a big family, he stood out right away. The other kids in his family grew normally, but Andre got bigger and bigger every year. He was 6 feet 3 inches tall by the time he was 12. He was 14 years old and 6 feet 6 inches tall. This strange growth trend wasn't seen in anyone else in the family. There were signs that Andre's height might be caused by his genes. People say that his grandfather was very tall, but not nearly as big as Andre would get. At the time, people thought that his fast growth was because it ran in his family. There were no early signs of chemical problems that doctors could see. Doctors didn't know much about conditions like acromegaly, especially in rural places. People who knew Andre didn't know much about his size. Without taking into account his size, Andre had a pretty normal childhood. He went to village school like every other kid, but even back then he went through things that would later become legendary. One of the most interesting stories about Andre's childhood is about Samuel Beckett, the famous writer. Because Beckett lived close and knew Andre's dad, he would often take Andre to school in his truck. Beckett came up with a way for Andre to get on the school bus even though he was too big. During the rides they would either talk or be quiet. Even though Beckett would become famous, Andre only knew him as the nice neighbor who gave him a ride. But Andre didn't stick around for long as a child. His family was having a hard time with money, and the farm was getting busier. He was 14 years old when his father took him out of school to work full-time on the farm. Andre didn't say anything against the change, but it was a big moment in his life. He lost the last bit of a normal youth. Following that, he had to work hard every day. Andre was big and strong enough to do the work of several guys. He helped his family get through hard times, but it cost them a lot. He missed out on being a normal kid. Andre never lost his sense of fun or kindness. Even when things were hard, people in Moulins called him a gentle giant. His friendly smile and nice behavior helped people remember him. He didn't scare the kids in the village. Adults looked up to him. Even back then he had a quiet charm that made people want to be around him. When he started working as a professional wrestler, this would become one of his best skills. The fast growth of Andre continued through his teens, and it became clear why it was happening. He was eventually told he had acromegaly, a rare condition that happens when the body makes too much growth hormone. The illness hurt his bones, mostly in his face, feet, hands and feet, but no one knew what was going on at the time. He just kept getting bigger, and people were amazed at how big he was. Even though he was a youth, he had to wear size 22 shoes and use special furniture. He learned to live with these things though and never let them get in the way of his kindness. Andre's youth was full of hardship, sacrifice and fame that came out of nowhere. Wrestling calls by the time Andre was 17. He knew that living on the family farm in Moulins wasn't enough for him. He had worked the land, helped his parents, and done all the hard physical work that came with living on a farm for years. But deep down, Andre was just plain bored. He knew he was different in more ways than one. In short, he wanted more from life. He wanted more action, more excitement, and more chances. So he left the country and went to Paris, only with his resolve and not much else. It was very different in Paris in the early 1960s than it was in Moulins. It was louder, bigger and full of new things to do. Andre got a lot of different jobs to make money. He worked as a mover, and was naturally strong, so it was easy for him to move big furniture. People also saw him and couldn't help but comment on how huge he was. A neighborhood wrestling promoter finally heard about it. When the promoter met Andre, they saw his promise right away, not just the way he looks, but also the way he acts. Andre was big, strong, and easy to remember. He could become a star if he got the right help. Andre agreed to try wrestling. It began as a small nearby event. He fought in small French settings, under the name Jean Ferret, which came from the name of a French folk hero. He was advertised as the gentle giant, and fans were amazed by how kind he was, and how strong he was. His first fights taught him the basics of wrestling, how to move in the ring, how to use acting to tell a story, and how to get people to care about you. But it wasn't long before he was too old for the scene in his area. People in other countries started to hear about the huge Frenchman. Soon after, Andre was asked to fight in Quebec, Canada, where people liked wrestlers with more dramatic and intense personalities. He was given the new name Monster Rosimov there. The new name was meant to sound scarier and get people's attention. People were amazed by his size in Japan, where he also started wrestling. Even though wrestling was highly regarded as a sport and a sort of performance art, he stood out right away. In the early 1970s, Andre caught the attention of Vincent McMahon Sr., the Deathson who was in charge of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation WWF. This was the most important turning point. McMahon knew Andre was unique, but he also knew that being big wasn't enough. Wrestling needed a figure that was bigger than life, and that fans would never forget. McMahon changed his name to Andre the Giant. The name change was just one part of the plan. McMahon also did the right thing, which changed Andre's future for good. He really made Andre stand out. Andre wouldn't put on a show every week in the same place. He turned into a big deal instead. McMahon carefully decided how often Andre would show up, so that when he did it was a big thing. This added to the story of Andre the Giant. Fans never got tired of seeing him because each time was a big deal. Andre fought in up to 340 fights a year all over the world. He was always on the move, going from city to city and country to country. He fought in Japan, Australia, Canada, and all over the United States. Andre barely had time to rest, because he wrestled so many times in a year, in both body and mind. It was tiring. He didn't give up though, because he loved acting and knew that what he did was important for making wrestling bigger than ever. Andre's success was helped by the way his supporters talked about him. One of the most well-known things about his career was the thought that he had never lost. This wasn't really true. It's true that he lost fights, but organizers worked hard to make the story stick. It led fans to think that Andre could not be beat. It made him seem more mysterious, and made every match more exciting. People thought they saw an unbeatable person when he walked into a wrestling ring. Of course, being that big was hard in some ways. It was hard for Andre to fit into cars, trains, and even hotel beds. Simple things like eating in public might be a problem. People would look at them, ask them questions, and sometimes even say mean things. He often felt awkward in public places, because he was always traveling, and had acromegaly. His health started to get worse as well. What caused him to get so big in the first place? His back, knees and joints hurt all the time, but he rarely showed it in public. The Princess Bride. When the 1980s came around, Andre the Giant was already a famous wrestler, but soon he would be even more famous, but not in the ring, on the big screen. A movie called The Princess Bride gave them that chance. It's a journey based on a fairy tale, with lots of humor, love and sword fights. The writers of the movie, William Goldman and Rob Reiner, had a specific person in mind for the part of Fezzik, the gentle giant. That guy was named Andre. Goldman wrote Fezzik with Andre in mind when he made the character. He thought Fezzik was big and strong, but also nice, funny and fun to be around. Goldman thought that Andre would be a great match in real life. Yes, Rob Reiner agreed. He thought that Andre had something unique to offer the movie that no trained actor could. Real charisma and charm that came from being different in a natural way. But it wasn't easy to get Andre to play the part. At first there was the problem of language. As English wasn't Andre's first language, reading a movie script was very different from wrestling lines or interviews that he had to remember. Some of the words were hard for Andre to say during auditions and early practices. He was afraid he would mess up or be taken the wrong way. Reiner and the rest of the team still had faith in him. They held his hand and helped him say his lines slowly, sometimes repeating them over and over until they felt normal. Over time, Fezzik's deep voice and unique accent helped make him stand out. Then there were the physical tests. His body was already under a lot of stress at this point. Years of fighting, traveling and the effects of having an acromegaly had made his back hurt a lot. He was unable to move as he used to. It hurt to do simple things like bend down or stand for too long. The script said that Fezzik had to catch Princess Buttercup as she fell, so the crew had to use a secret rig. Andre caught her with the help of special effects and support lines. Even though it looked like he did it naturally, there were also some other changes. In one scene, Fezzik is riding a horse, but Andre is too big for a normal horse to safely take away, so the crew had to set up the saddle in a special way, and carefully guide the horse while making sure everything was level. Being so big was an important part of the story, but it made shooting harder than anyone thought it would be. Even with all of these problems, Andre gave the part his all. Fezzik turned out to be exactly what Goldman and Reiner had hoped for, a big guy with a big heart. People really liked how Andre said his lines, mostly the cute and silly rhymes with Inigo Montoya, his partner in crime. People loved his most famous lines, like "Anybody want a peanut?" It was funny, kind and strong to be Fezzik. People liked him right away, and Andre's obvious warmth came through in every scene. The Princess Bride was a huge hit when it came out in 1987. The crowd wasn't just wrestling fans anymore. A different side of Andre was shown to people of all ages. This movie was the first time many people saw him. He wasn't just a huge guy in the ring anymore. He was a movie star who also had a heart. Andre was very proud of the part he played. Everywhere he went he had a VHS tape of The Princess Bride with him. He would often show it to people, telling them how proud he was of what he had done. Besides wrestling, it was his favorite part. For Andre it was more than just having fun. It showed that he was more than people thought he was. WWE Super Bowl III. In 1987, Andre the Giant was more than just a wrestling star. He was famous all over the world. However, something even bigger took place that year. He got in the ring for a match that would go down in history as one of the most important and talked about in the sport. At WrestleMania 3, Andre the Giant fought Hulk Hogan. Not just any match, this one. It was carefully set up to look like a fight between two myths. Andre was sold as a force that couldn't be stopped because he hadn't lost in 15 years. That streak wasn't true in every way, so it didn't matter. Fans were sure of it. There was Hulk Hogan on the other side. He was a rising American star, and the face of the World Wrestling Federation. Hogan was big, loud and full of life. In the 1980s, he was everything that young fans liked. Vince McMahon, who ran WWF, knew that putting these two huge stars together would make for an unforgettable event. WM3 took place at the Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan on March 29, 1987. The stadium was packed with more than 93,000 people, one of the biggest groups in the history of wrestling. A lot more people watched from home. One main idea was used to sell the event. Would it be possible for Hulk Hogan to beat Andre the Giant? Things were not as good as they seemed on the outside. Andre's health was getting worse quickly. Years of wrestling, traveling, and dealing with acromegaly, a hormonal problem that made him very tall, had really worn him down. His back was in bad shape by 1987. He hurt so much that he could hardly walk. It hurts to stand for long amounts of time. It was hard to do anything, even get into the ring, but Andre wouldn't give up. He refused to back out of the match, even though it hurt. He took drugs to get through it. Some news sources say he was in a lot of pain during the event, but he never let the people see that. He knew it wasn't just a wrestling match, it was a big change. Andre was almost done with his time in the gym. Hogan was changing the way people saw wrestling. For both people and ideas, this match was a passing of the torch. It wasn't a long technical fight during the match, but it didn't need to be. It had a story. Andre got ahead quickly by using his size to wear Hogan down. The crowd cheered for Hogan, and was fully behind him. Each punch and move made things more tense. Then the moment that changed history happened. Huge crowds of screaming fans watched as Hogan picked up Andre and slammed him to the floor. No one thought that move would work. Hogan had never lifted that much weight in front of that many people before. Andre weighed over 500 pounds at the time. The win was sealed by Hogan's ending move.
the leg drop, which came after the body slam. The crowd went crazy when Hogan pinned Andre. Today that moment is still shown in highlight reels. It became a famous moment in the history of wrestling. It will never be forgotten by fans. He thought it was a great way to give back to the company he had helped build. He let Hogan win, because Andre wanted the sport to keep going. He did it, even if he wasn't the main character anymore. Andre has always been very important to Hogan, even behind the scenes. Several times, he said he was scared about the match, and wasn't sure Andre would let him win. Because Andre was a professional, he didn't think twice about putting Hogan in the center. He was good for business. That's when Andre helped start a new era in wrestling and cemented his status as a hero. Andre kept wrestling for a few more years after WrestleMania 3, but his body kept getting worse. Still, that match was the best of his career. That's when Andre stopped being just a fighter. It was cool to be American to know him. Andre the Giant was well known by people who didn't even watch boxing. The world knew about his picture, size and kindness. Last years and death. As the years went by, it became more and more obvious that Andre the Giant's life and fighting had hurt his body. At one point the man's size and power amazed everyone. Now he was in a lot of pain all the time. His health was getting worse, and it was getting harder for him to do anything. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Andre had a hard time getting around. His back problems were very bad, and it hurt him to stand for long periods of time. It hurt and took a long time to walk. He tried to stay away from planes as much as possible, because the crowded seats were almost too much to bear. Acromegaly, the hormonal disorder that had made him so big in the first place, made his situation worse. His bones and organs got bigger because of this disorder, which also caused a number of major health problems, such as heart problems and joint degeneration. Andre started to spend more time at his ranch in Ellerbay, North Carolina, as his wrestling dates and public events slowed down. The land gave him a place to get away from the cameras, the noise and the constant travel. He took care of horses and liked living in the country, where it was quiet. It became his safe place. He could feel free from the stress of being Andre the Giant there and be himself, Andre Rennie Rousimov. But Andre still had health problems in his personal life. He moved around with the help of a lot of different things. People who knew him well knew how much pain he was in, even though he rarely talked about it. His friends said he still smiled, laughed and told jokes. He was tired though. The man used to fight 300 times a year, but now he needs help just getting out of bed. Andre went back to France in January 1993 to attend the funeral of his father, Boris Rousimov. He died in his sleep from congestive heart failure while staying at a hotel in Paris. He was 46 years old. Even after everything he had been through, he died quietly. There were no interviews or cameras there. It was just quiet. There was a giant who fell in a hotel room, not in the ring. The wrestling world was shocked by his death. Fans, wrestlers and organizers all felt very sad about it. Vince McMahon, Hulk Hogan and many others told stories about how funny, strong and kind Andre was. Andre didn't make a lot of noise in his later years, but his impact never went away. The business world knew they had lost a one-of-a-kind person. He was more than just a fighter. He stood for wrestling in general. Mostly in the 1970s and 1980s, his burning was complicated by the fact that he was so big. Normal crematoriums would not be able to handle Andre's size. In the end, plans were made to scatter his ashes on his ranch in North Carolina, which was his best place, and where he felt most at home. There wasn't a big wake or lots of flowers. In that way, Andre wished he didn't want a big deal or a lot of attention from the press. The man who had been bigger than life finally wanted to have a quiet death. Fame and being a father, all the fame Andre the Giant had in his life, being a dad was still the most difficult thing for him. Andre had a private life that not many people ever saw. It was hidden from the cameras and the attention of wrestlers. His bond with Gene Christensen and their daughter, Robin Christensen Rousimov, was one of the most emotional and complicated parts of his private life. It was in the early 1970s that Andre met John Christensen. Gene did more than that. She also did public relations work for the wrestling business. Being over 6 feet 4 inches tall, she always drew attention to herself when she was with Andre. They looked beautiful together. Many people thought they were married because they had been together for so long, even though they were never actually married. On and off they were together for a few years though, beginning around 1972 and going through the 1980s. They mostly avoided the reporters and kept things pretty quiet. Jean had a girl named Robin Christensen Rusimov in 1979. Robin was the only child Andre had. Andre's life didn't go as planned when she was born, which should have been a big event. Even though Andre knew Robin was his daughter, they didn't have much in common. Robin only got to see her dad about 5 times in her whole life. There were several main reasons why Andre and Robin could never become friends. The first was Andre's plan. He was always moving because he was one of the most sought-after wrestlers in the world. He moved from country to country every few days and fought in over 300 matches some years. In fact, he barely had time to rest, let alone spend time with his daughter. There weren't many phone calls, and it was almost impossible to set up visits in person. But the gap wasn't just real, it was also mental. For most of his life, Andre was a mythical figure, someone who wasn't real. He wasn't just a man to most people, he was the giant. He had a hard time living a normal daily life because of how he was seen by the public. In the beginning it might have been hard for Andre to switch from being a world star to a dad. He cared about Robin, but he didn't know how to be a dad. According to people who knew him well, he didn't talk much about his feelings, but he may have been guilty, confused, or even scared. Had something to do with how things turned out. She went to the United States after giving birth to Robin and raised her daughter by herself. The choice was made by Joan to keep Robin out of the press. It was important to her that her daughter grow up in a normal, quiet place, away from the chaos of the wrestling world. This kept Robin out of the public eye. But it also made things worse between her and Andre. Most of the times they did meet, it was short and awkward, and there wasn't much time to get to know each other. The saddest part of this story was when Andre died. Andre passed away in January 1993 while in Paris for the funeral of his father. For a month Robin didn't hear about it from family or friends. Instead, one of Andre's lawyers told her. The news being late made the loss even worse. He was gone after barely knowing him. There were no farewells or last talks, taking the giant shadow with them. Robin's mother, Jean Christensen, raised her mostly in the United States. Because Jean used to work in wrestling PR, she met Andre through that job. She was also tall, over 6 or 4 feet, which was one of the things that caught Andre's eye about her. But the government never accepted their relationship as a marriage. They were already moving apart by the time Robin was born. Robin had a private and interesting life. It was well known that she was Andre's daughter, which sometimes was not a good thing. It was hard for her mother to keep her from the world, but she did her best to give her a normal life. In recent years, Robin has been open about how strange it is to be connected to someone so famous while also feeling far away from him directly. Robin got some of her physical traits from her father. Like her father, she stands out because she is tall and strong. She has also been known for having a strong will and being independent. Andre started wrestling when he was a teenager and became famous all over the world. Robin, on the other hand, picked her own path, which wasn't always in the spotlight. At one point, Robin thought about becoming a wrestler. Many fans and marketers were interested in what she could do because of her background and looks. She learned and tried. But in the end, the wrestling business wasn't right for her. It didn't seem to fit right. Interviews with other people have shown that she admires what her father did, but she didn't feel the need to fight like him. Robin has instead been more interested in movies, art, and sharing stories, especially the true story of her father. Documentary filmmakers have worked with her to give the story of Andre the Giant more meaning and truth. She worked on 2 important projects: the 2015 documentary Andre the Giant, Closer to Heaven, and the HBO show Andre the Giant, which helped new fans understand Andre's life better. In these projects, Robin wasn't just his daughter, she was also his heir and protector. She helped make sure that the films showed more than just the performer. They also showed the real person behind the myth. She pushed him to be honest about his life, even the painful parts like his health problems, his loneliness, and the feeling of being alone because he was so different from everyone else. For Robin, these facts were very important in figuring out who Andre really was. Robin lives a pretty quiet life in Seattle these days. She's not a famous person and she's picky about where she goes. Whenever she does talk, it's usually to honor her father or support something she believes in. People have seen her at fan gatherings and in interviews, but she does these things on her own time. Please like, follow and click the bell to make sure you don't miss the next video if you like this one.